I've already said that there's sort of this undercurrent through the book of the idea that these orphans are not people. They're kind of denied their personhood. And in my experience, my own experiences in my own childhood, but also my experiences working with students as a school counselor, I think that many kids who aren't even experiencing major trauma like this still have that experience of I'm not as much of a person because I'm not 18 yet. And I think the really big takeaway from this series is all people are people. It doesn't matter how old you are. If you're still a person, you still matter. And you matter to me. And I really want teenagers to read this book and take away from it that they're important and they matter and they deserve to have a voice no matter what age they are. Their opinions matter, their dreams matter, their goals matter. And I want those kids to know that I see you.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. Another great author on the podcast. Book coming out in February. I'm excited about all this. I love a new book coming into the world. It's like a new person we get to meet. And AJ is going to introduce us to this new person, being this new book and series that are coming. And I'm excited to have AJ on the podcast. Lots of great stuff to talk about. AJ, welcome to Living the Next Chapter.
Thank you for having me.
It's exciting. All right, tell everybody, AJ, where are you in this big world of ours?
I live in Kansas City, Missouri in the U.S.
Tell me the best thing about Kansas City.
We have a really big creative scene. So there's just a lot of spaces for artists of all kind, performing arts, visual arts, writing. It's very cool, really, all the support that there is for the arts around here.
Excellent. I love a creative space. That's good. And that you can celebrate that as a community. That sounds great. Mm-hmm. So that's what keeps you there?
Really, we're kind of from this area. So I grew up in Illinois, but my husband grew up in Kansas City. And we've kind of lived all over the place in the 20 years that we've been married. But we wanted to move back home, and Kansas City was home to us. So this is where we ended up about 6 years ago, and we like it.
So beyond being an author, AJ, tell me, who is AJ Whitney?
My day job, I'm a high school counselor. I've worked with all levels of kids from kindergarten all the way up through 12th grade. I'm also a mom. I have 2 teenagers who don't like me to share too much about them publicly, so I won't say a lot there to avoid embarrassing them.
There you go.
But I really love kids and teenagers and working with various age groups. I think sometimes I get along with teenagers better than other adults.
Yeah. What is it about working with those students that you love? What is it?
It's hard to say because there are so many things. I really enjoy kids are trying to figure out who they are, and they're putting on different hats and different faces and figuring out all these different things about themselves. And it's really fun to be a person that can be important to them and help them figure out who they are, help them figure out what's important to them. I just kind of love to see the moment when that all clicks for them and they can finally be comfortable with themselves.
You're a very welcoming person, AJ. Like every time we've talked and stuff, I just feel like you feel comfortable talking to you. And I'm sure that the kids that you work with, when they come in your office or you see them in the hallway, there's like a natural attraction to you as a adult. I think we need great adults in our lives as kids. And a lot of these kids that we come across, they don't have like a great environment that they're growing up in or supportive family members or whatever. They're all coming from different backgrounds, right? So to have somebody amazing like you in their lives, I'm sure that's a big advantage to them. Have you ever had a student kind of come by your office or catch in the hallway and tell you kind of like what you mean to them? Like, I'm sure you've heard those kind of stories. What stands out to you from one of your students?
Oh gosh. I actually keep a box in my office where I keep all like the letters and cards and things that students write me. And so I probably couldn't quote one to you, but I've gotten a lot of really meaningful notes from kids over the years. And I feel a little emotional talking about it. But they just can be so sweet. And there are a lot of times where I've connected with kids who have trouble connecting with adults. They're maybe a little bit challenging in their behaviors, and they test the adults that they come in contact with because most people are not patient or kind because they can be challenging. But my husband would probably say I'm the most patient person in the world. I don't really get angry. I don't really yell. I think maybe once my kids are like upper high school. I think maybe once they've heard me yell in their whole lives, and they were like,
What?
because that's just
Wow.
not who I am.
Yeah.
And so I even just recently had a situation with a student where he was maybe using some inappropriate language about some other people, some kind of dehumanizing language. And I think most people would have gotten really angry with him. And I just said, hey, I'm going to ask you to please not use that word anymore with me. I don't really like it. And he went, oh, okay. And this was a kid who hadn't wanted to talk to me. And then all of a sudden he started telling me everything about his life, all these
Yeah.
things he was interested in. And I thought, I don't exactly know how that happened, but I'm really glad that it did. So,
I think any adult that can see the humanity in a student and draw that out for them, and they feel safe with you, that's a great connection. That's a great community that you're building. Just by
I do
doing
try.
that. Yeah, I love that. So that kind of leads into your target audience for what you're doing as an author. Before we get into your books, what was it for you to go from working with students like you're doing to saying, you know what, I want to take my desire to be an author and start writing? What was your initial idea or spark to start becoming an author and doing this?
Really, I think I had wanted to be an author since I was a little kid. Um, well, my mom embellished the stories, but the way the story goes is that I taught myself to read when I was about 3 years old, and could already read when I went to preschool. I don't know. But I always really loved reading. And it was sort of an escape for me in a lot of ways from things that weren't always very pleasant. And I had a great imagination and just always really wanted to write a book, but never felt like I had any ideas worth writing. I remember in middle school, I had like all these notebooks and I would write like the beginnings of stories, and they were so embarrassing. And I'm pretty sure they don't exist anymore, which I'm real thankful for. Um, but yeah, I didn't feel like I had any ideas for a very long time. And I was over 30. I might have been 35 when I had the idea for this first book. And just kind of started writing down the ideas. And as I sat down to try and write the book, I hated everything I wrote. And so I deleted it all. And then I left it alone for a while. And then I think I was like cleaning out a bag from work or something, happened to have these notes in it. And I found the notes and I thought, I give this another try. And it was more fun the second time. But where I really came from, I think, was I won't go into details really, but I did have some childhood trauma. And I think I realized as I was writing this book, and it's from the perspective of a child, that I sort of was using this as a way of processing, as sort of an allegory for some of the trauma that I went through. And I don't know, I think I just related to it from that perspective of the child, I guess. And as I've written, it's actually going to be a trilogy. So as I've worked on writing the next 2 installments in the series, I've realized how helpful it is that I understand kids the way that I do, because I can continue writing from the perspective of a teenager, and it makes sense. If that makes sense.
Yeah. How does the process of writing your book change you as a person? Like, how have you grown in the process of actually doing this?
I think the thing that I've noticed the most is my ability to accept feedback. Because I wrote this book first and didn't have any like big dreams of publishing it necessarily. I just wanted to write it. And it was probably only like a novella. It wasn't very long. And I sent it to a friend of mine who, besides my husband, was the only person on earth knew that I was writing a book. And she happens to have an English degree and wants to be an editor one day. And so I said, would you take a look at this and tell me what you think? And boy, were her notes hard to read. And it's really easy because a book is like your baby, right? Like you put all of this into it. It's really easy to read that and get offended or take it personally. But I knew that this was my friend and she cares about me and she wasn't trying to be harsh, even though it feels harsh in the moment when you read it, right? So I read through all of the notes and then I just left it. I just sat on it for like 3 months and did nothing with it. And then when I came back after some time, I was able to look through the notes again and understand the truth of it because I had taken my time and processed through the emotions and wasn't emotional about that feedback anymore. And I think just through that experience, I've learned the importance of, getting different perspectives and a lot of different feedback from different people throughout the process. And that's true of a lot more than just writing. I don't think any of us are the best we can be on our own. We need other people to show us and teach us and be willing to be honest with us. And we have to be willing to be vulnerable with other people too. And that was a challenging lesson to learn, but it was such a great thing to get better at too.
And that helps you to be a better writer then as well.
Mm-hmm. Better writer and a better human. Because now
Nice.
I find I can accept feedback easier in other areas of my life too.
So what else? What was like some of the hardest parts for you as an author to write this book? What were some of the challenges you faced?
Probably believing in myself.
Okay.
Just because, like I said, I had started writing it and everything I wrote at first I hated. And I think that's how it had been for me anytime I'd ever written anything, from the time I was a kid. I would try to write a story of my own and I didn't like the way it sounded. I never liked to go back and reread my writing. I didn't enjoy anything that I'd ever done. And I don't know if that comes down to a self-esteem issue or just lack of experience. But I think that was a challenge, was figuring out what this story was and where it was going to go and believing that I actually could make it sound good.
So I'm a musician. I've been doing music for 40 plus years. I feel old saying that out loud, but I find if I listen to certain types of music, I find I'm inspired by it. And sometimes that music seems to come out in me, like I'm kind of replicating someone else's music. So then it feels like, am I just copying someone else? Am I just being a duplicate of what they're doing? But I find that all of the different types of music I like kind of blends together and creates my sound of who I am. So I'm a kind of an amalgamation of all these different artists, right, in different styles. And I'm always nervous, like, is somebody going to say, that sounds like so-and-so, or that really sounds like their song? As an author, are you kind of like influenced by other authors? And if you are, does it kind of seep into your writing and you're reading it going, well, that really sounds like so-and-so. As I look at that line, that's like what they would say. Like, do you feel that, or do you feel you're totally unique on your own? Explain that to me.
I've never thought about it before. I doubt that I'm totally unique because I don't think there's a whole lot that's completely new anymore, right? But I'm not a person that reads like any one author, everything that they've written, as opposed to like with music. I have favorite bands and I'll listen to them a lot, the same songs over and over and over. I don't necessarily do that with books. I read a lot. I read at least a book a week most of the time. And so I'm sure that I am influenced. I actually have noticed the last couple of books that I've read, I've gone, ooh, that's a really good word. Why do I never use that word in my books? And so I just kind of make a note, like I was looking for a synonym for that the other day. I'm going to need to remember that. Because, we all have our own language that comes naturally to us. And so I think that helps me kind of expand how I write, the language that I use, the perspectives that I use. But I don't feel like I read any one author so exclusively that it probably would be noticeable. That's just my best guess. I don't know. I guess when the book comes out, we'll find out if people go, oh, that sounds just like whoever.
Yeah. Well, that's good. It can be an advantage too. It can be like, that it helps you to find your voice. It's all part of the mix, right?
Right.
So you walk down the hallway at school and you walk by creative writing class, which is in session, and you're like, I'm going to stop in and talk to these students. The teacher allows you to in, and here you go. You're at the front of the room. All of the students, paper, pen ready. They're listening. They're like, we want to learn how to be an author. We want to write our story. And we look to you as an inspiration in the hallways of our school. And now you're here talking to us. What do you say to this classroom? How do you encourage these students to chase their dream to become an author? I got my pen and paper and I'm ready to write down whatever you say. But what would you say to this group of students to kind of encourage them to do what you've done?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the most important things you can do is get to know yourself and accept yourself for who you really are. I know, especially in the teenage years, it's real tempting to just be whoever anybody else wants you to be or who you think you should be to be popular or have friends or at the very least not get made fun of. And I like to tell kids to own your weird. Weird is a very good thing. Like, I mean, I'm a 40-year-old woman with a mohawk. Like, I'm very in favor of weird, and I don't think there's anything wrong with being different. And in fact, I encourage kids to be different because that's how you figure out who you are and what you're good at. You don't need to be anybody else but yourself. And I think that's the first step to any creative endeavor is accepting yourself for who you are and loving yourself how you are.
That's interesting because, like, growing up, anybody that was different or unique or, that showed up in the world different than everyone else, they were kind of singled out and mocked. But I'm thinking, I like the way you're talking, that the way you're different, unique, and special could be something that draws people to you.
Yeah, exactly.
And not something that you run from. So I like this.
Yeah, and I think I was in about 7th or 8th grade when it occurred to me, well, I was not a popular kid. I was not cool. But it occurred to me, looking at the kids who were popular, I was like, well, what is different between them and me? And the difference was that they didn't care what other people thought. And so I started out kind of trying to imitate that because I did still care what other people thought, but I tried to pretend that I didn't. It was sort of a fake it till you make it kind of situation. And I found that the more I tried not to care about other opinions, the more successful I became at that. And the less, other people's words hurt me because I was finding my own value in my own self. And that was it was really great. And I've continued to be weird this whole time. And I just, I love to see kids, be who they are. And maybe who you are is very mainstream and very normal. And there's nothing wrong with that either, as long as you love yourself how you are.
Beautiful. And then we can just end right there and be all done. But no, wait, we have to talk about the book.
Right.
We got to talk about the book, right? Okay, so Sovereign is coming out February 28th. I have been working with amazing authors through Blue Handle Publishing. Great people there, by the way. Great authors. You're in a great group of people just by doing that, by the way. But Sovereign, one thing, I'm on your website while we're chatting, so I'm kind of looking off camera to look at the website. But one thing I noticed, I want to just highlight this at the beginning. You have a little, which Sovereign character are you? Enter your email for a quiz. Wait a minute, before we get into the book, what is this all about?
So I just thought that would be a fun little thing for people to be able to do, either getting ready for the book or even once the book comes out and they can, once they've read the book and actually know who the characters are. And I had some of my friends who have read the book early to give feedback have taken this quiz and they thought it was really fun. So yeah, I mean, it's just sort of one of those fun little personality quizzes. You might see like the BuzzFeed quizzes and things like that. What Friends character are you, or what, Hogwarts house do you belong in? It's sort of like that. So just asks you some questions, and you have, I think, 6 answers to choose from. And it gives you a percentage for each character at the end. What percentage of this character you are, and gives a little description that matches
Nice.
their personalities. So I worked really hard on that. I thought it'd be really fun.
Well, we want to honor that. You worked hard on it. That's great. So, okay, talk about the book now. I'm curious about these amazing characters that we could be. So everyone has to go do the quiz, by the way. But talk about the book. Like, tell us kind of a big picture of the book, and then let's get into some detail on it.
So the book follows teenage orphan number 332. She has no name. She lives in the orphan home with several other orphans, all with numbers instead of names. They are being raised to be sacrificed to their village's gods, Sovereign.
Ooh.
However, the village leaders start to question whether this centuries-old practice of sending their orphans to the Sovereign is really okay. They start to question whether the Sovereign are real after all. And then the question becomes, what happens next? If they choose to end this sending, this sacrifice, then number 32 could end up with the real life that she's never let herself hope for. But what if the Sovereign are actually real after all?
What is the time frame that this has been going on, that these sacrifices have been made? It's like hundreds of years, or short period of time? What is it?
About 300 years.
Oh, okay. Wow. All right. Is there a significance to 332?
So I mean, they're numbered by, how she would be the 332nd orphan in this process. So they send 10 orphans every 10 years.
Okay. All right. So there's some math we're doing as well here. I like that. Okay, good. And true teacher ideas. There's some math to do. I like this. Okay. So how many kids are we talking about are together in a group at any given time, like living together? Like, can you give us an idea? Like, is this a large group of kids that we're talking about?
So, there's usually around 10 to 15 living in the orphan home at any given time. It's a really small community, about 300 people. So they don't have a huge population of orphans. And because they only give 10 every 10 years, there's not usually like a huge holdover from the previous sending, if that makes sense.
Yep. Where did the original idea come from to even start writing this?
It was a really strange dream I had.
Oh, I love strange dreams. Okay, you got me good. Let's go.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like I dreamed out just most of the main basics of the story. I was the orphan girl. In the original dream, she was much younger, maybe like 6 or 7. In the book, she's 13.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it was this whole, like, they're going to be sent to the gods, and a couple parts that I remember very clearly. One I won't tell you because it would give some things away.
Yeah, don't do that.
But one was the meeting where the villagers are trying to decide if they really believe this is real. And there's a lot of subtext about children being treated as less than human. And in the book, the orphans are not really considered real people by the rest of the village. And they need that emotional separation in order to do what they're doing. But in that meeting, they're discussing like the actual humanity of these children that they're talking about sending away to these gods. And I just remember that very, very clearly because I was in the dream from the perspective of the little girl, like hiding in the back of this meeting that she wasn't supposed to be watching, and listening to everybody talk. But what was really interesting about this dream is that there's actually dual points of view in the book. And you kind of spend the entire book trying to figure out how these two stories are related, and what in the world they have to do with each other. And it was really interesting in the dream that I was actually dreaming dual points of view of stories that didn't seem connected until the very end. And I woke up and I was like, whoa, I get it. And then I thought, this needs to be a book.
Wow. I think it's interesting. I've had like a thread of authors that I've talked to here on the podcast where it seems like they get a tap on the shoulder to write something, like through a dream or inspiration. It just keeps like, it's like it sits on their shoulder. And it feels like if they don't respond, it's just going to pick up and go to someone else, and someone else is going to do it. So I feel like this kind of just dropped on you, and it's like to see if you're going to react and do anything with it.
Right.
And I love that when an author kind of is willing to accept this kind of, you've been chosen to write something like this, right? I love it when an author's like, okay, I'll accept the task, I'll do the thing.
Right.
And to see where it goes from there. That's really cool. I love that.
Yeah, that's, and I had mentioned I never felt like I had anything worth writing. Well, ever since I wrote this first book, I've had like a nonstop flood of ideas now. So you'll probably be seeing more books from me in the future.
Okay. So you said you're going to write in trilogy.
Yes,
Did you know that at the beginning, or did you write, you're going to write one book?
I had sort of written the ending to where it could lead to more, but hadn't yet decided what I wanted to do with it. And then when I received my publishing offer, they said, we'd really love to see this be a trilogy. And I was like, well, okay, then let's do it.
There you go.
Yep.
I like that.
And then I just finished writing the rough draft of the third book just last week. So
okay, so again, we've talked about this. I'm currently not an author. I've never written anything, so I don't understand how this works. So you're the expert in the room here. Talk about working with like somebody like Blue Handle Publishing. Like, how does this work? They find you, you find them. I don't understand how this works.
Well, my story is really atypical. Typically, you would try to find an agent first, a literary agent, and you write up oh my gosh, I'm a writer and sometimes I just can't think of words. You write up a submission letter, basically, and they have different agents and different publishers have different requirements for what they want to see in there. But you write up a letter based on somebody's specifications and you send them. Sometimes they ask for the first 10 pages of your manuscript or the first 2 chapters, or, you just follow their specifications and you submit to people in batches of like 10 or 15 at a time and wait for responses. And then, and typically authors can expect to get hundreds, if not thousands of rejections before they have somebody say, yes, I want to do this with you. And some publishers also will accept directly from authors, but some publishers will only accept submissions from a literary agent. So that whole process can be complicated, and you really have to steel yourself and decide early on, I'm going to be thick-skinned because it's easy to get discouraged otherwise and to say, whatever, I'm never publishing this book. For me, however, it was a little different. I actually had submitted to a couple of publishers accepting open submissions, and I had started submitting to agents. And I met someone on TikTok, of all places, and struck up a conversation with her, and she started asking me questions about the book. And then she said, well, I actually know somebody who works in publishing. Do you want me to connect you? And I was like, yes, please. And so then they gave me a call later that day, and I had gotten, actually had received a publishing offer. That was a hybrid offer, which means you publish under a traditional contract, like the publisher has control of the rights, but you pay a portion of the upfront costs. So it was, that's not typically recommended, but I didn't know what I was doing at that time. And I was excited that somebody had any interest in publishing me. But this other person, he called me up and he talked to me and answered a lot of questions. And he actually took a look at the company that had offered me the hybrid offer. And he said, it's not terrible. He said, it's a lot better than others that I've seen. He said, but what would you think about sending me your manuscript and I'll read a couple chapters? He said, I can't promise you I'll read the whole thing, but I'll read a couple chapters and then I can get back to you and let you know if I think that, this is a good deal for you or if you should be submitting to agents or self-publishing. And I said, sure. I mean, I'll take any help I can get. Right. And it took a few months, I think, before I heard back from him. And he said at that time, okay, I got to be honest with you. He said, this book is way too good for a hybrid deal. He said, you need to be looking for a traditional publisher. And I said,
Wow.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know if it was any good.
Yeah.
And then he said, he happens to be someone who works for Blue Handle. And he said, well, and if you want, I could run this up the flagpole and see if we'd be interested in publishing it here. He said, I can't make you any guarantees. He said, and I also understand if that's not what you want to do. And I said, no, please do it. And another few months later, they contacted me and said, hey, we want to know if you're still looking for somebody to publish this because we're interested. And I can't stress enough, that's very atypical, but I feel like I just sort of lucked into it. I found the right connections at the right time.
What a difference between your husband and your friend, as the only two people in the world who know about this book,
right,
to that situation. Like,
yeah.
That's amazing.
I was like, I had no idea I knew it was good at like writing papers because I have a master's degree. I had to write a lot of papers, but I had no idea if I was good at writing anything fiction. And so I was scared to let anybody read it. And so, yeah, they were the only two people that knew. And then once I'd made all these adjustments, I spent years rewriting it and I started letting other friends read it. And they were like, you need to have this published. Really?
Wow.
It was wild. It's been a wild ride. It really has.
Okay. All right. So let's jump back to the book for Sovereign. Can you give us, you have the quiz so we can figure out which type of character we are?
Yes.
Can you kind of explain to us some of the characters in Sovereign that we're going to find as a reader for the first time? We're going to have your copy of your book when it comes out in February, ready to open it. Can you give us kind of an overview of some of the characters we're going to see in Sovereign?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the main character is orphan number 332. All the orphans shorten their name. So she goes by 32 for short. She came to the orphan home a little older than the other kids. So she was it's sort of a pioneer village and they don't have modern technology. That's important. So a lot of the orphans that come, it's mothers who died in childbirth sorts of things. And so they come with no memory of their families. She was about 3 when her parents died from an illness. And so she sort of has some vague memories of her parents. She is pretty headstrong. She is very sarcastic. She loves to be outdoors. Her special ability is tree surfing, she calls it. So she's a tree climber, but she can manage to kind of jump from tree to tree from the branches. She's basically fearless and, you'd have to be very athletic to pull that off, I think. Her best friend is 33. They are a year apart in age. So 32 is 13 and 33 is 12. And they are practically sisters. I mean, they've grown up together their whole lives. They share a bedroom. 33 is really artistic and funny. But she is maybe more obviously emotional than 33. She's more, emotional is not the word. She's more tenderhearted. And she really loves all the little kids. And they both play with all the much younger kids in the orphan home. But 33 is like the little mom to all the babies. She just loves them so much. And then there's an older boy who is 31. And they think he is so self-righteous and obnoxious. He's like very prim and proper and wants everybody to follow the rules and do everything just so. But he's also always trying to do things to help other people out. And the trouble is that 32 doesn't see it that way. She sees it as he's just showing off how righteous he is, how committed to the Sovereign and everything. So those are your three main teenage characters. There's also an adult couple, John and Maggie. Maggie is one of the caretakers at the orphan home, so she spends 1 week a month there with the kids, taking care of the kids, and they call her Mother Maggie. And they just love her. She makes the best pancakes and gives the best hugs, and she is also the head elder of the village council. And so she is the one who sort of spearheads this movement to save the orphans. And you get to know her husband, John, a little more later in the book, but he's more like strong and silent. He's a very sweet, supportive man. Does a lot of working with the farm. But then in our other storyline, there is the gray-haired woman who, much like the orphans, doesn't have a name that the reader is aware of, at least. And the gray-haired woman is trying to solve the starvation emergency, I guess, in her own little community. And her community is more this like post-apocalyptic dystopian community where you can tell like they have modern technology. You can tell that something in the world has gone wrong and they've been struggling to survive. And this really sort of supernatural event happens at the beginning that wipes out all their crops. They've struggled for decades to survive, and now they're finally making it. And this thing happens, and all their crops die. And now they think they're all going to starve. And so they're trying to understand what is happening and how do we get around this. And then it's up to the reader to try to figure out throughout the book how these two storylines are interconnected. And what do these two people have to do with each other?
All right. As you're listening to this, you're like, oh, challenge accepted. I want to figure out how this all works together. I love that you're giving us these little pieces, AJ, and then you're backing away. You're like,
and never hesitate to message me on my social media or tag me in a video or something with your theories, because I love to hear the theories. I will never tell you if you're right or not. But I love to know what people are thinking as they read it, because the theories vary so wildly from, things that seem like normal every day to like totally far out supernatural or like sci-fi. I mean, it's wild, and I love to hear all the ideas.
One of the other things I hear from authors, AJ, is once you write your words and share your story in your book, you don't own it anymore. Like it becomes the property of the reader. And they're going to take your words and go anywhere they want with it. They're going to filter it through their lens.
Yep.
You wrote it through your lens. I'm reading it through mine. So I'm going to pick up on things. I'm going to add to the story in my brain. And it's kind of like your story has a whole new life of its own outside of you. It happens in music. I write a song about A, and somebody walks up to me and says, I like the song that you wrote about B. I'm like, well, I didn't write about B. I wrote about A.
It grows its own special meaning in someone else's mind and heart. Yeah.
Right? I love that. So, okay, so my question to you, and I like doing this once in a while. You have a chance to sit down with, say, orphan number 32.
Okay.
They walk into your room with you right now, just the two of you. And now you've created this character, this whole world. But there's something about orphan number 32 that you don't know clearly or in any type of depth, or something you're just curious about that character that you don't know the answer to. What is the question you ask orphan number 32 that gives you some clarity, that solves something for you as an author, something you just don't know the answer to? What would you ask them?
Well, boy. That might take me a minute.
See? Think about it.
And what could I ask her that doesn't give spoilers to you guys?
Yeah, exactly. Don't do that. Don't do that. But something about her story maybe that you didn't get into, or that you're just like, I wonder if ... I like watching your eyes as you go
As I'm like
places in your
processing
brain.
this.
You're like looking to the left, looking to the right. I like this. It's interesting.
I maybe would ask her what if. So I've already told you about this, the dream that I had where there was this meeting and they were deciding if they want to continue this practice. And maybe I would want to ask her, what if the decision had gone the other way? What would you have done with that? Because I already know which way the decision was going. So I didn't have to think out that whole other half of the storyline, that other possibility.
Okay. All right. Okay. The other thing, now you can wave your hands at me like, don't ask this question, and I'll stop. Okay. You can, so you feel free to do that. Okay. Just wave your hands at me. But do the orphans, do they have any sense of what's coming for them? Like, this is your fate. You are in a waiting room, basically, to end up going to Sovereign? Is that something they know of? Because I would think that would be really kind of sad.
Yeah, so they know that they have a special purpose as orphans. So the orphans really are the whole centerpiece of this village's religion, really. They're very special and set apart. They live in the orphan home, but the orphan home is like set far off in one corner, and it's like there's tree lines on either side of it, so that they frame it as having privacy for the orphan home and the orphans. But I also think that there's an aspect to where it's so that people don't have to see them and think about what they're doing. They don't wear regular clothes. Like, they wear a totally separate outfit. And so they know that they're special. They know that they'll be sent to live with the Sovereign. They don't know that that means sacrifice. So they think really like we're being sent to heaven and we'll have this wonderful life to fulfill this amazing purpose. And they do this to get their harvest. So if they don't, so the idea is that they send the orphans to the Sovereign, and the Sovereign return the favor by providing for the rest of their people to survive. And so the children know, like, we save everybody. And this is like we have all these wonderful things. But there's also, even just as you read the first couple of chapters from 32's perspective, you really start to get that she feels uncertain about what this really means, and that there is, even though it's supposed to be a special, wonderful thing, there is this kind of lingering melancholy about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think that would be something that's like over, just this kind of this cloud over them, even in the being chosen part. There's still this chosen for what again? Like,
right.
I would just be like, because their kids are naturally curious about everything. So
right.
I'm sure they're asking those questions going, why are we here?
And that's one of the other things, actually. One of the lines in, I think, chapter 3 is, in our community, we don't ask a lot of questions. Like, they're very discouraged from questioning anything because that's the way it's always been.
Okay. That's interesting. All right. Okay, so the book is coming out February 28th, according to your website, which I love.
Yep.
Great website, by the way.
Thank you.
So we can do pre-orders, correct?
Yes. Pre-orders are up currently on, what I know at for sure, they're on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and bookshop.org at the moment. Now, fair warning, as of the day we're recording this, it says it's releasing April 8th. But it's not. Okay. It's February 28th. You will get it sooner than that.
Okay, that's good to know. And again, we can go to your website and we can take the quiz, which you've worked so hard on. Everyone should do. So we can find out which character we are. Do you know which character you are based on your own quiz?
Ooh, I did take it and I can't remember, but I would assume I'm probably a 32.
Are you? Okay, all right. I was curious
Because
about
I wrote
that.
the
Okay.
book very from her perspective, and she took on a lot of my mannerisms. She
Okay.
rolls her
Well, that
eyes a
makes
lot,
sense.
which I realized is because that's how I would react to some of the things.
I love it, AJ. This is great. Okay, so take us to the website. Again, we're going to be looking at your website in the future. We're going to be listening to this
Mhm.
long after this comes out, but take us to the website and kind of what we're going to see when we get there. I see there's all kinds of information we can click on and check out. There's a book club, there's a bookstore, there's merch, there's all kinds of stuff on here. But take us kind of through your website. And what's the name of your website, too?
AJWhitneyBooks.com. So should be easy to remember, I hope. The homepage is pretty straightforward. It's a big old picture of me from a year ago when I had my head shaved. Because again, own your weird, right? And it just has, a little bio of me. You can email me from the homepage. You can sign up for my newsletter from the homepage. But yeah, you can check out Sovereign on there. The full blurb is there. There's actually the first 2 chapters free on the Sovereign page as well. What else is on there? There's
Your social handles are there.
yes, and I actually have 2 TikToks. So AJ
Of course.
_Whitney and AJ Whitney books, both on
Okay.
TikTok. I use TikTok and Instagram the most, but I'm also on Facebook and Threads. And
Okay.
but yeah, bookstores are there. That links to my bookshop.org and my Amazon. Those are affiliate links. I don't host my own bookstore, at least at this time. But, a lot of my favorite books, the books I've been currently reading, those are all on there. What else? I do have a book club that I host from my AJ_the writer TikTok account. That's intended for teenagers. We read 1 book a month in the genres that I write and enjoy reading. So horror, thriller, all kinds of speculative fiction, really.
Okay.
All those what if this happened kind of books, or what if this was real. And so we get together on my TikTok once a month, second Friday of the month at 10 p.m. Central Time. And we talk about whatever book we've read. And I'm live on video, but, if you're a teenager, you can't be live on video. So I just, talk to people in the chat and we have a good time.
Nice. So everyone go get your first 2 chapters of Sovereign.
Yep.
Right there on the website. I love that you do that. I don't see that often. So that's a great idea, by the way, AJ. I love that.
Yeah.
So again, as we close off, AJ, your big wish for a reader, what do you want them to know? What do you want them to hear from you as the author as we close off? Kind of your parting thoughts on Sovereign.
I mean, I think, I've already said that there's sort of this undercurrent through the book of the idea that these orphans are not people. They're kind of denied their personhood. And I, in my experience, my own experiences in my own childhood, but also my experiences working with students as a school counselor, I think that many kids who aren't even experiencing major trauma like this still have that experience of I'm not as much of a person because I'm not 18 yet. And I think the really big takeaway from this series is all people are people. It doesn't matter how old you are. If you're still a person, you still matter. And you matter to me. And I really want teenagers to read this book and take away from it that they're important and they matter and they deserve to have a voice no matter what age they are. Their opinions matter, their dreams matter, their goals matter. And I want those kids to know that I see you.
I love it. What a perfect way to end, AJ. I love that.
Thank you.
This is great. You're a great guest. Please do more of this because I think more people hearing your voice, the better. A great guest on a podcast. So well done on that. And congratulations on the book in advance.
Yeah.
Looking forward to celebrating with you closer to the date as well. And everybody, I would encourage you to go check out AJ's TikToks, plural, because, hey, we might as well have more than one. That's great. And then go to the website as well and make sure you go look in the links in the show notes everything is always there for you to connect with AJ. And I know that AJ would love to hear your thoughts about the book. When you get your copy, you're going to leave an amazing review wherever you buy the book so that other people will fall in love with the book as well. That's really going to help AJ sell more books, which is great, reach more people. And this is also, something you want to think about for future gifts for your family and friends. Perfect way to support AJ, but also to get the word out about the book. So as you listen to this, please continue to support our amazing authors on the podcast. We want to see them keep writing. And AJ, I'm going to leave the door open for you with more books coming in the future. You got to come back, give us an update so that we can continue the conversation.
I would love to. Hopefully we'll know when book 2 comes out soon.
All right. Keep me in mind. AJ, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
All right. Thank you, Dave.
Hey, thanks for being here for the Living the Next Chapter podcast. So glad to have you as part of our family of listeners. There's a seat for you just here on Living the Next Chapter, and I'm so happy that you have listened to all the way to the end. Wow, you are now my new bestie. I want to let you know that I host 7 other podcasts on top of Living the Next Chapter. Yep, 8 total. One of them is called the How To Podcast series. If you are thinking, you know what, Dave, this podcast thing seems like a lot of fun. Well, I'll give you a secret. It is. It's a great, amazing, fun time where you can get to meet great people, get your word out there, promote your book, promote what your coaching program, whatever you're doing. Podcasting is great. And if you want to learn how to do this, what you're hearing right now, head over to howtopodcast.ca and look up the How to Podcast series on YouTube, whatever app you're listening on. You'll find me there. And I'd love for you to come listen to how to do this. And if you're interested and have questions on how to podcast, reach out to me at howtopodcast.ca. Thank you for listening. Talk soon.